Okay, let's look at what CFD can do in terms of huge problems, let's say for aerospace companies. So the next few slides I have borrowed from companies like Boeing and Airbus, which are really at the forefront of making the most ambitious machines, the airplanes. So when you build airplanes, you design airplanes, essentially for the purpose of analysis, you have two options. A is to do some kind of a wind tunnel testing. So those of you who are not familiar with wind tunnel testing, let me describe it to you. So if I want to design an aircraft and I want to put engines on it, I would like to know what is the drag or the air resistance faced by this aircraft, because that would decide what is the size of engines that I put in. I do not want to put very big engines and I do not want to put very small engines which cannot pull my aircraft. Okay. I would also like to know how much lift my wings generate, so that I know what is the weight of this aircraft that I can design or I can operate. Now it would be very silly to first make an aircraft, then fly it, then get the data and then say, oops, I made a mistake, let me make another one. So usually what we do is what are called wind tunnel tests. So we make a scaled down model of an aircraft, maybe a 100th model or a 150th model, and then we put it inside a tunnel. A tunnel is something like a room that you are sitting in. So there is air coming in from one end of the room, it goes through the other end, and this is driven by a fan. So this is an example of a test section, as you can see. So air comes in from the front and leaves from behind. Okay. So instead of the aircraft moving, the aircraft is stationary, but the air is moving. So we have done a change of frame of reference. Now by using dynamic similarity, I can estimate what should be my wind tunnel speed or the speed of the air for the given size of the aircraft that I have scaled down to. And then I can put this model on a balance, measure the forces and moments and calculate the coefficients, and then again scale up the coefficients to calculate the forces for my prototype. So that is typical wind tunnel testing. So now if you want to check a different design, maybe you can put in a different wing, or maybe change the location of these nacelles or the engines, or maybe the tailplane or the landing gear, and then generate data which would be useful in design. Now obviously that is going to be very expensive. The other way is to actually model this through CFD. So rather than making a hardware model of this airplane, you actually make a computational model, okay, a CAD model kind of a thing, and then you put a grid around it, do a flow calculation, and then estimate the forces, the dynamics of the aircraft and so on. So whatever information you could get from wind tunnel testing, at least a part of it or sometimes even more, you can get through CFD. What you can also do is that maybe these 3-dimensional high fidelity models are very expensive, okay, they have a very large turnaround time. And let us say I was only interested in designing the flaps and the slats of the aircraft for the time being. So I could take a 2D section of this wing, for example. So that is my airfoil section. I have a slat and then I have a flap downstream of it. So instead of doing a 3D calculation, I could initially do 2-dimensional calculations, and then once I have achieved some kind of an optimality, then I do a 3-dimensional simulation or a few more simulations, and I can then validate that with a wind tunnel test. So big aircraft companies now, what they do is they use all these 3 tools, so 3D simulations, 2-dimensional simulations, and of course wind tunnel testing in a loop, so that they can come up with a cheap and an easier way of generating airplanes that are efficient and easy to operate for the airliners. So how has CFD helped Boeing? Again, this is a slide directly from them. So listed in this slide are the various CFD tools that they have used. In the 80s, for example, they did not have such high fidelity tools as they have today. For example, now they can do unstructured grids, adaptive, and we'll understand these terms as we go on. So it suffices to say that with the number of years passing by, the complexity of the CFD tools that they have has increased. So they are more robust, more accurate, more capabilities to handle complex problems, but they now also need more computational resources. These are the various products that Boeing has produced, the various kinds of aircrafts starting from 767, 757 and so on. And this really is the bottom line. So you can see in the earlier models they were doing a major amount of wind tunnel testing, that's in the black color, and now in modern times they have replaced this wind tunnel testing with a lot of CFD and very few wind tunnel tests. Okay, so that should convince you that what is the role of CFD in modern times. So less testing, and Boeing claims it leads to lower cost, and because you have very accurate results, more confidence, and you can do a more wider analysis for a number of parameters, hopefully you get better products. What about Airbus? So I thought you would be interested in looking at a competitor, which is the European consortium. So these pictures I have taken from a conference paper by Becker, which was published in 2012. You can find a copy on the internet. So Airbus has a very similar story. These are the years, the x-axis. So we are talking about all the way from 65 till about 2010, and these are the various products. Okay, the 310, the 320, 321, and of course the jumbo 380, and then of course the 350. These are the various models that Airbus has been using over the years. So from very simple models which are potential equations essentially for irrotational flows, inviscid irrotational flows, extremely simple, linear models mostly. Then you graduate to Euler equations where you are now not restricted to irrotational flows, you can handle rotation a little bit, but still no viscosity as such in the flow, but you may want to fit some kind of a boundary layer or a shear layer code to it. And then of course the full Navier-Stokes equations in their glory. And you can see the various configurations that they have been able to handle through their CFD over the years. So starting from simple airfoils to a swept back wing, and you can see there is a shock on it, so some kind of a transonic flow, to a full aircraft configuration, but this is inviscid. So you can use some kind of models to estimate the drag and the lift, and then of course the full Navier-Stokes, which would lead to full flow separation and some kind of turbulence modeling and so on. So this is what the description is. So these would be simple vortex models and mainly subsonic flows in the late 60s or so. So these would be very small, very simple geometries, and the complexity is at a very minimal level. So we have already shown here something like airfoils. Then you move on to slightly more complex configurations. Now you can deal with maybe some viscous flows, you can add some turbulence models, and finally you can talk about flow separation, more complex configurations, and then of course a full aircraft. So you can see the problem size kind of increases. So you can look at the number of unknowns that you would be talking about. So you are already talking about 1 million degrees of freedom here, and then perhaps something like 1 billion here, okay, and then it kind of gets unmanageable and you would need very nice high performance installations to cater to these. Again a slide from Becker from 2012, and in this they very nicely talk about what can CFD be used for in aerospace industry. So they've categorized it in these three classifications. So something which is used very routinely, something which is kind of once in a while, and these are actually the wish list where you want to use them more often. For example, if you want to look at flutter predictions or a low speed wing design or about the fuselage, okay, belly fairing, nozzles, some kind of deformation of the structure, handling quality data for your simulators and so on. So all that is fairly routine nowadays and you can use CFD for that. A little less use is when you do wind tunnel experiments, for example, then you need to support your model and that itself changes the flow. You see, unlike in CFD, which is kind of a standalone model where there is no interference, but if I have to hold a model inside a wind tunnel, then I need to actually make some corrections. So one can use CFD to make those corrections. Wall effects. So if I have a wind tunnel where my blockage effects are large, the walls are too close to the model, those also those corrections I can make using CFD. Then things like ventilation, okay, inside the cabin and of course inside the cockpit, and sometimes the electronics, it generates a lot of heat, so cooling that down. Ice prediction, for example, as you know, as you go to higher altitude, you could get ice formation on the wing and that could lead to deterioration of the performance of the aerodynamics. So how does ice form? What is the penalty that it causes on the performance? The auxiliary power units, their design, ground effects, as the aircraft comes close to the ground, you get more lift generation and the drag also gets modified, and so on and so forth. And then there are some of these uses which are now coming in a little bit more into practice. For example, the flow control devices, okay, for the next generation of aircrafts. Something to do with engine components, or for example the thrust reversers when you land, okay, and so on and so forth. What is the future according to Becker at Airbus? This is an old slide, as you can see, almost a decade old, so please take it with a pinch of salt, but it does give you a flavor. So the y-axis is the technology performance, okay, and the x-axis is the time, and these are the various aircrafts that have emerged, the devices that the company has been able to pull, and if you look at the trajectory, more or less you would saturate, okay. So the idea is that if you want to get the best aircraft with the thinking that one has, you would have to go for something like multidisciplinary optimization and get this aircraft. But if you want to leapfrog to the next level and get an aircraft which is very high on performance and uses the state of the art technology, perhaps something that is only in laboratories these days, then actually CFD would help you a lot. So if you could do flow control and use multidisciplinary optimization, for example the wings would deflect, okay, under the air loads. Can we now use that to our advantage, okay? For example, the tail design, can we optimize that? Can we use the coupling from the engine exhaust and the tails and so on to get a better aircraft configurations? So maybe that would get us to a new configuration. This is again a slide from Airbus, just to give you an idea about the the performance that is being talked about. So, on this axis is actually the available computational capacity in terms of flops. So, this is a gigaflop, this is a teraflop, okay, and then a petaflop, exaflop and a zettaflop. And this is on the x axis is the year. Okay. So, for example, if you look at something like 2005, we are talking about a few tens or hundreds of teraflops. Okay. If you want to, so this is the curve that we are talking about. Somewhere in 2025, we should be talking about a few tens or hundreds of exaflops. That would be the state of the art. And this is here the various kind of expertise that is available, where the backbone is CFD. Okay. So, you can do a full multidisciplinary optimization somewhere in 2015, and what is expected is that when you go to 2030 and you have really the state of the art computing power as projected in 2030, then as a pilot, when I can do the flight simulator testing, I do not run on a database. I actually have a 3D Navier-Stokes solver at the back end, and the computer feeds the data as it would compute on the fly. So, I fly the aircraft and I put it in different configurations, and I get a Navier-Stokes solution based on the inputs that I give in. So, that is really a state of the art flight simulator, and that would be really a boon. Just to let you know, we will talk about this later in the course. These are Reynolds average Navier-Stokes, where you use a turbulence model and then a more high fidelity, which is a large eddy simulation. So, a full large eddy simulation for an aircraft is really a dream, and that is expected to be a game changer as far as getting more accurate data for your designs. Okay, just changing gears a little bit, let us go back and try to ask ourselves, how long does it take to generate a mesh on an aircraft and then do a calculation on it. And I specifically chose this slide to make you realize that the first mesh that was reported, as per my knowledge, was in 1978. Okay. But the first calculation, the world's first calculation on a complete aircraft, of course a different one, this is a 747, the 200 version, was actually reported in 1986. So, you can see the amount of time between just the generation of the mesh and actually doing the calculation. Okay. So, CFD is not simply making a geometry, generating a grid around it and then magically coming up with an answer. There's a lot more that happened in between, and we will of course discuss this as the course goes on.